A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Survival of No Limits. And yeah, you can definitely see the location around me just by looking at these lenses, but that's kind of besides the point here because, well, now's the time I go in to talk a little bit about the next topic here in Survival of No Limits, and that of which is going to be about submarines. Yeah. Episode 59 is about submarines. I mean, that's kind of an interesting connection because after all, the year 1959 was when Disneyland first opened their very own sort of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea sort of exhibit. As mundane as it sounds, it certainly was a pretty impressive piece for the time that it was in. It's been more than 60 years though, and we've seen a lot of improvements and innovations with that, but you know what, I'm probably getting off track with that. So let's go back to just actual submarines. So, submarines, of course, are one of the many types of underwater crafts that you could pretty much use if you wanted to get deeper and deeper without worrying about water pressure squeezing the life out of you. That's not good! Oh my gosh, man. That was all too good. Man, that just came up out of nowhere. I'm sorry. So, okay, going back to what I was saying. Submarines are underwater crafts that you could use to go deeper under the surface of the oceans or wherever you're trying to go to around the world without worrying about water pressure squeezing the life out of your body. And yeah, that's pretty much what that's all about as a baseline, but I'll go into greater detail on it right now. The usage of submarines has actually been around for a very long time. It practically started with the conceptual ideology invented by author Jules Verne, especially with the novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was published in 1870. And then 84 years later, there came a movie based on the novel itself, which of course was made by Disney. It was one of the only times at the time where Disney had actually made live action films. And although it's very common to see some like those today, it was pretty rare back in the day, especially when Disney was mostly a professional in terms of the world of animation. And it's kind of sort of like the opposite formula with most other companies pretty much. But in terms of how Disney handled that stuff, man, the movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea really was quite a blast in most ways. And then of course I actually took a look at the 1961 film, which probably was a bit of a rip-off in some ways, but Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, which came out 7 years later, 1961, man, I feel like that was kind of fun, especially with that little musical segment that happens during the first minute or so of the film. On our voyage to the bottom of the sea. Yeah, I could be here all day just toning out that. It keeps getting stuck in my head, I'm sorry, but oh man. In terms of how submarines work, like nowadays especially, they actually are probably some of the most technologically impressive pieces of craftsmanship and, well, vehicular assembly ever made. Especially given to the fact that they are in fact engineered to go very deep under the ocean, which is only appropriate given to the fact that that's what they're designed for, but most of the time there are actually some limitations that you could find depending on the sub you're using. If you're very familiar with World War II, where the Nazis used something known as U-boats, they of course were very similar in most ways to the modern submarine that was around in American history. And these of course were actually originally made for Cold War based research. which they were grayish in color. But then of course there came along actual scientific subs, which were painted yellow and sometimes given some accent coloring. And that also kind of leads me back to Disney, where they used to make theme park attractions based on submarine voyage related sort of things out there, including an actual attraction based off the movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. As terrific as that sounds, I mean, it's no longer really around pretty much, sadly, but we can at least hope for some other new things to develop with submarine related things. But once again, submarines, of course, were very impressive many years ago, but looking at them today, we do kind of look at them as being sort of an average piece of craftsmanship, but they still do what they're supposed to. They're supposed to take us thousands of feet below the sea, fathoms upon fathoms, or leagues, or whatever the kind of measurement is that you typically use when gauging from the surface to whatever part of the ocean you're trying to dive down to. But let's not forget, if there's one thing that truly terrifies a lot of us when it comes to submarine related things, then well, it'd be the water pressure itself. But also because some other things could be responsible for destroying some parts of the submarine, or at least damaging it to the point where water could start to rupture through the walls of a sub and then begin to, well, just enter into it. So of course, as terrifying as it seems to be, not everybody seems to be afraid of it. Pretty well, considering how that seems to be quite a big part in our lives. And we do in fact like to explore, so going underneath the oceans, it's no easy task, but if you do it right, then well, you can get it done pretty well. So, that's just pretty much what that's all in down the line, but again, submarines are pretty well known even to this day, but do they still do as impressive as they used to be when you compare it to many other vehicles? Well, again, it's a bit average most of the time, especially when the fastest plane that we got right now is basically the SR-71 Blackbird, and then of course we have ourselves a lot of other vehicles that have broken a lot of speed records and also have had a lot of, well, durability and other feats out there that are more than impressive. So, again, that's just pretty much what that's like. So, that's pretty much it for here. But I still have a lot of other subjects that I might want to talk about at some point in time, so consider staying tuned to Survival of No Limits, especially for all that. And if you want to see more, go down to my channel. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.